one of the biggest cheers North Carolina has heard in a long time when we all saw that she was still intact, and she was just beautiful.
It was one of the most beautiful pieces of rusty metal I've ever seen in my life. I had made myself and my ancestors a promise that I was going to go around the outside and touch every den I could see, and I touched every den.
If an Army officer is walking the fields of Gettysburg, they get this sense of their heritage. For a naval officer, standing next to the Monitor just really gave me a sense of where I came from. Please exit to your left.
First thing that we found on the first dive on the Monitor was the last thing anybody saw of the Monitor in 1862 was the red signal lantern before it disappeared.
In life, but I infinitely prefer to see a peaceful separation of these states than to see an endless, aimless, devastating war, at the end of which I see the grave of public liberty and of personal freedom. John Gray.
The rebellion will not last long. I can get my discharge from the Navy in less than 6 months. I can assure you I'm not going to...
Mallory asked me to design an iron warship shortly after the war began. I therefore proposed an armored casemaker atop an extended ship's hull. The casemaker consisted of 3 inches of iron plate covering a 2-foot base of timber. To support this massive battery, I proposed extending
A bit too heavy.
Enslaved people on Shirley Plantation, just 58 miles of the James River from where you're standing right now. And on this cloudy May night in 1862, he's standing on the shore of the James, looking out at Monitor, anchored just off City Point across the river. Does he stay and leave his fate in the hands of others? Or does he literally risk his life, no telling what would happen if he got caught, and push this boat into the water? He gives it hope.
And then he's rowing up to Monitor, hoping that the crew will take him on board.
Over time, these mariners traveled thousands of miles, relying on a deep understanding of the sun, moon, and stars to help guide them across the Pacific Ocean. Some stars formed shapes called constellations, which moved based on the seasons and positions as these mariners sailed. Locating stars or constellations can help estimate location and direction. As seasons change, some constellations, like Orion, can be seen in both the northern and southern hemispheres. Others can only be seen one or the other. In the southern hemisphere, the crux points to Tunga, which is Maori for south. The Maori called this constellation Te Paim Hotoka and thought of it as an anchor. In the northern hemisphere, Hawaiians look for the Little Dipper to locate Hokupa, or the
It
North
says
Star,
to please start your tour here.
So now you know.
It says start.
assembly of the deck, the carlings and wedges, the mast partners. The next stage will be putting on the deck planking and the hull planking. I expect around 2 years to have it completed. Yes, these are some of the woods that I use in model building. The problem of getting suitable woods was apparent as soon as I started, because kiln-dried commercial woods are just not suitable. In fact, most of the woods that I use are not commercial woods. This piece here is pear wood, which is hard to beat for frame. In fact, the old Admiral builders all used it almost exclusively. Now, these are a couple of pieces of boxwood from a very generous friend of mine in South Africa. Boxwood, of course, was used extensively by the Admiral builders back in the 17th century, and has been used over the centuries quite a bit for small carvings. But I don't like it quite as well as the wood that I use. Boxwood often has a black heart, as you see in this one piece, but the best wood is the yellow wood. And these are some pieces of apple wood. Apple wood is an excellent planking wood. It's hard to beat, and I like to use apple wood and mix it with laurel to give a contrast so the joints in the planking can be plainly seen. Don't have somebody asking me the foolish question of was it a difficult job to mark the planking. And this is an old piece of boxwood here that I've had for at least 40 years. I don't even remember who gave it to me, but somebody that had bought it for some purpose and knew that I might be able to use it, gave it to me. This is a thin piece of apple wood, which bends quite well. Now, the wood that I use for carving, the white thorn that comes from the Pacific Northwest, it is very dense. And of course, there's a lot of wastage in that because it's not a commercial wood. The tree never gets larger than 5 inches in diameter, and will have a lot of knots. But of course, I use it in very small pieces, so a little bit of wastage when you have plenty of it doesn't mean very much. Tools have been a problem when you ever start to do miniature work, because you'll soon find out that commercial tools aren't available for work that small. So you just have to improvise and make your own. A great deal of them are from dental tools and surgical tools, and some others are...
World War I began in 1914. The German Navy faced an overpowering enemy in the Royal Navy. So German commanders embraced an old strategy of commerce raiding to regain the advantage. Their weapon? The submarine. Before World War I, submarines had been used exclusively as coastal defense vessels with limited offensive purpose. But German submarine or U-boat commanders roamed the open waters off Europe, attacking enemy merchant vessels without warning. The new strategy was effective and infuriated the British, who branded German submariners as criminals in Allied propaganda. Germany's new submarine strategy proved itself in September 1914, when U-9 fired torpedoes from periscope depth and sank 3 British cruisers in the North Sea. The following May, another U-boat sank the British passenger liner Lusitania, with 1,198 on board, including 128 Americans. While Germany was able to temporarily smooth over U.S. relations damaged by the incident, German U-boats ultimately brought America into the war, and unrestricted submarine warfare resulted in the sinking of several American ships early in 1917. Initially, the U.S. Navy ignored the submarine threat and relied on auxiliary craft, such as those vessels loaned by the New York Yacht Club, to serve as patrol craft before the Navy established effective anti-submarine defenses and maneuvers, which limited the U-boat carnage. Between World Wars I and II, the U.S. Navy studied U-boats and hired German submariners. By studying German designs, American shipbuilders produced a series of improved submarine types. These new submarines had a wider range, making them capable of roaming the vast expanse of both the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. Still, many of the Navy's top brass refused to consider the submarine as an offensive weapon, dismissing it simply as a fleet auxiliary or scout vessel. But the view quickly changed with the outbreak of war in both the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. Between January 1942 and September 1945, American submarines destroyed more than 55% of Japan's merchant fleet and 20% of Japanese naval vessels. Meanwhile, in the Atlantic, German submarines' extensive reliance on radio communication to coordinate attacks made them vulnerable to Allied naval forces, who inflicted heavy losses on the German U-boat fleet. U.S. Navy submarines also rescued a large number of American aviators, including a future U.S. President, George Bush. In 1944, the U.S. Navy submarine Harder was lost off Luzon. Commander Samuel D. Dealey was posthumously awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor. In his 5 previous missions,